Hey, what's up guys, Adam here, and in this video we're going to be looking at the question, is Adobe potentially losing users? So without any further ado, let's get right into it. So I'm going to be addressing this question from a video editor's perspective. Now, I've been doing video editing for just under 10 years. I started off doing gameplay edits on my old channel, which was Boost 8638. Some of you might remember that from my previous video that I mentioned it in. And then I moved on to technology review videos. And then from there, I've actually jumped into what I mainly do now, which is music video edits and corporate videos. So I started using a piece of software called Magic's Movie Edit Pro 17. It was a great piece of software, allowed me to get my toes wet in the realm of video editing. I then shortly moved on to a software called Sony Movie Studio 12, before then moving on to its bigger brother, which was Sony Vegas. And at the time, a lot of actual YouTubers that made gameplay videos when trick shots were very popular on Modern Warfare. A lot of people were actually using Sony Vegas so they could make use of the Twixtor plugin that allowed you to actually slow down the footage, the gameplay footage, to an incredibly large amount without losing much quality. So Sony Vegas, especially in the gaming edit world, was a fairly popular piece of software. Now, Magic's actually bought out Sony when it came to their video editing software, so it's now actually called Vegas Pro as opposed to Sony Vegas Pro. Now, it wasn't until 2013 when I made the leap into getting my hands on Premiere Pro. Now, at the time, Premiere Pro was renowned as the industry standard, and it still is the industry standard when it comes to video editing. So you was almost told that if you really wanted to get serious about video editing and in the creative field, then Adobe was the way to go. So I made the leap in 2013. It's been my primary editing software ever since. Now, it was also in 2013 when Adobe decided to completely abandon their Creative Suite package at CS6 and move over into the Creative Cloud model. Now, Adobe CS or Creative Suite was a completely standalone package, and at the time it was incredibly expensive to buy outright. We're talking maybe around £1,000 to £3,000 for the entire master collection. So the primary reason for Adobe moving into the Creative Cloud Suite was that it allowed users to enter at much lower entry points. So they didn't have to go ahead and spend thousands of dollars on the whole Creative Suite outright. They could simply just pay a monthly subscription fee, which is now at $49.99, and it's a lot more of an attractable purchase than buying it for a couple of £1,000s. In addition to this, having the software in a Creative Cloud Suite means that they could actually do a lot more incremental updates on main versions rather than doing only principal updates on, say, the standalone version of Adobe. However, it's not just Adobe that's moved over into subscription service. A lot of software such as Maxim Cinema 4D, as well as Autodesk and Octane Render Engine, are also moving over to the subscription model in order to lower that boundary of entry. However, now fast forward into 2020, and a lot of video editors are starting to experiment now with different video editing software. Now, simply jumping ship from one software to another is not always going to be an easy endeavor, especially if you run a large creative business and you've completely invested in Adobe. You rely on Photoshop, Illustrator, Adobe Audition, or you may rely heavily on dynamic linking across all of the staff within your business. Then simply just scrapping Adobe there and then is going to be a lot harder to do than you think. And though I'm speaking from a video editor's perspective, when it comes to more of the main software like Photoshop and Illustrator, even to this day, there isn't really any other software that can actually full-on compete with Photoshop and Illustrator when it comes to image and graphic design. So there's software such as GIMP or Canva, but they really don't compare to the full customization that you have in something like Photoshop or Illustrator. So going back now to the video editor's perspective, now Premiere is an industry standard. It's very powerful. There's a lot of plugins for it. A lot of people are making use of the essential graphics, but it is not without its problems. So Premiere is kind of one of those softwares that if you play nice with it, it'll play nice with you. And there's a lot of errors that you can run into if you're doing things in an unconventional manner. Some of the popular ones are like an IO error, render frame error, out of cache error, and of course the dreaded unknown error. And a lot of these errors tend to pop up when you least expect it, and some of these errors have been going on for a number of iterations of Premiere now and are still not being addressed. Now, of course, you do have Adobe support, which is what you'll pay for when you have the subscription service, but even still, the support that's from Adobe is kind of hit and miss.
It's a bit of a sticky one still.
I wouldn't really put too much thought into it. But when it comes to those errors, they can be incredibly annoying, especially if someone needs to churn out videos on a regular basis in a short amount of time. Now, in addition to this, Premiere also does not really scale very well on high-end hardware. And to be fair, a lot of video editing softwares also do not scale too well when it comes to using high-end hardware. You would think now in 2020, when we have like AMD 32 core, we've got processors from Intel that are capable of 18 cores. and a lot of the video editing software does not seem to really scale well, and Premiere is absolutely renowned for not scaling well when it comes to using high-end hardware. It really just doesn't scale well as, say, 3D modeling software or 3D animation software that does tend to scale quite well when you're using high-end hardware. So it's actually a great video made by Level 1 Techs. I'll leave it in the info card above. And they suggest actually using 2 PCs when it comes to working with Premiere. One to do all of your editing on, and then create a watch folder in Media Encoder, and then send it to the second PC and have the second PC actually render out the project. It's quite a technical video, and it's quite an interesting video, so if you're interested, be sure to take a look at it and see how all that works. So then what is the alternative then if you are a video editor and all you really do and want to focus on is just video editing? Well, if you're on the Mac platform, that means you have access to Final Cut Pro. Now, Final Cut Pro is a lot more refined when it comes to Premiere because I've only just made for the Mac ecosystem. So it means that a lot more of the bugs and creases can be ironed out a lot more easier than, say, a cross-platform software like Adobe Premiere. Now, when it comes to playback on Final Cut Pro, it is really smooth. I actually used it for about a year on my last channel. I actually used it when I had my Hackintosh, and it was a breeze to edit on. It was completely smooth, and the render times were incredibly fast. So when it comes to Final Cut Pro, it's definitely not as popular as Premiere. The libraries for plugins, effects, motion graphics is not quite as large, but it is starting to grow. And a few years ago, a lot of big name YouTubers like Unbox Therapy, Marques Brownlee, Austin Evans, Your Average Consumer all decided to switch from Adobe Premiere Pro to Final Cut because the render times in Final Cut, as I mentioned before, are really quick. And if you're someone who used to churn out a lot of videos on a frequent basis, then that render time really does start to add up. So Apple does have an ecosystem per se when it comes to having Logic Pro as well as Motion 5. But when it comes to especially Motion 5, that's supposed to be Apple's response to After Effects, it's just not in the same league when it comes to the levels of what you can do in After Effects compared to Motion 5. Now, when it comes down to pricing, Final Cut Pro, it has a standalone price of $299. So once you've paid that price, that's it. You own the software, and all of the updates that follow that are all completely free. Okay, so what if you're not on the macOS platform? What if you're just on Windows or Linux? Well, you have a new player to the game called DaVinci Resolve. Now, DaVinci Resolve is created from a company called Blackmagic. Now, Blackmagic specializes in creating cinema cameras and a lot of live production equipment. That actually rolled out DaVinci Resolve as a color grading tool more so than a video editing platform. But over the last few years, Blackmagic has really put a lot of focus and time into more of the video editing side of the software. So now it is actually starting to be a real competitor to Premiere Pro. And a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, so how does it work in terms of having its own ecosystem? Well, it does have a lot of inbuilt audio and motion graphic tools built within the platform, so you haven't really got to go to another platform. So it's not like having to go from Premiere to After Effects because all of the tools are all in the one platform. So DaVinci Resolve's answer to something like Adobe Audition is their Fairlight tool, which allows you to do a lot more complex audio editing than you could just do in the standard Premiere Pro editor. Granted, it's not as advanced as something like a full standalone software package like Adobe Audition, but it is definitely sufficient for those that are just mainly focusing on video editing more so than doing soundscape design. Now, DaVinci has a tool and a standalone software known as Fusion. Now, Fusion is kind of Blackmagic's response to After Effects, but the main difference is that Fusion uses a node-based system rather than a layers-based system like in After Effects. And the node-based system is also used within their color grading tools in DaVinci Resolve, and it's also very similar to the node-based system that's used in Blender for the 3D modeling application Blender when it comes to working with materials and UV mapping. So it is a bit of an unconventional way of working when it comes to video editing. Once you've actually got your head around how the node system works, it is incredibly powerful. Now, if you own a Blackmagic camera, say like the Pocket Cinema 4K or the 6K or any of the Ursa line, then having or using DaVinci Resolve is almost like a match made in heaven. It's kind of like, of course, having Final Cut Pro for Mac. It's actually made for the system. They're made to work together. So in that regard, you're not going to have to go through any sort of transcoding. You're not going to have to go through any sort of conversion. It will work natively in DaVinci Resolve. And alongside that, DaVinci also makes a lot better use of the GPU, which means you're going to get a lot better playback speeds and above all, a lot faster render times. Now, there's definitely other software out there as well. Like I mentioned at the very start of the video, there's Vegas Pro. There's also Hit Film Express, and if you've really got a lot of money to spend and a lot of time to learn, there's Avid Media Composer, though it's got a very steep learning curve and it's mainly only used in Hollywood for large working collabs. But hey ho, if you want to take a look into that as well, that is available. So what is my final verdict? Well, I'll close by giving you two examples. If you're someone who mainly does video editing in the realm of weddings or interviews or corporate talking heads, then you could probably pretty much get away with using, DaVinci Resolve or Final Cut Pro without having to jump into any other software. However, if you're someone that requires a lot of effects, a lot of motion graphics, if you're someone that, say, edits music videos, if you have a large team of creatives that rely on, say, graphic design, animation, photo manipulation, then I'd say right now, Adobe is still your best bet. And because I'm so heavily reliant when it comes on After Effects and Audition, and even sometimes Photoshop, it makes it incredibly difficult for someone like me to step out of the ecosystem and work on other software. So now guys, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like down below. If you dislike the video, make sure you hit the dislike button twice to make sure that I know. If you have any further questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section down below. And if you want to see more videos like this, be sure to hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit the notification bell so you know when we go ahead and upload videos to this channel. Anyway guys, this has been Adam here. Make sure you stay safe, take care, and of course, I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.